from the drama of a courtroom to action outside Parliament House. And last night, boys, it was a very busy night. Of course, joining me to discuss the protest that we saw is Andrew McDonald, the journalist covering the story. Thank you, Andrew. National Affairs Editor Dennis Atkins. Thank you, Dan. And we'll get on to federal stuff later as well, so stay tuned, folks. And of course, Jay Horrett from Equal Love Brisbane. Welcome to you all, and thank you very much for jumping on board. Andrew, changes to the Civil Partnership Act were cleared overnight.
Right.
What does this mean?
Well, it basically means the laws in their initial form were brought in, it was late last year, by the former Treasurer, Andrew Fraser. Now, they essentially allowed all couples, same-sex and hetero, to register in what were called civil unions. That's a legal recognition of the relationship. And part of the law also allowed them to allow those couples to hold a state-sanctioned ceremony if they so wanted to celebrate. Now, the changes the LNP government brought in and that got through last night were to scrap the state-sanctioned ceremony, and that was due largely to sort of concerns that it may mimic marriage. And the other thing was that they've changed the name to registered relationships rather than civil unions, although they are still legally recognised.
Okay, the debate, as I mentioned, was interrupted by protesters. Describe the scene.
Well, it all started at about 7:30 at the just as the debate was getting underway in Parliament. About 100 people sort of gathered outside the House. I suppose voicing their concerns, predominantly rights activists, I suppose. They then moved on into the gallery as debate got underway. Now there were sort of several instances where the Speaker sort of asked people to calm down. Sort of people were interjecting. He threatened to clear the public gallery a couple of times, but and a couple of men were also. One man was removed. He left of his own accord, but it really sort of hit the fan, I suppose you might say, when another man was asked to leave. He refused to do so. The Speaker again asked the gallery be cleared, and police then moved in. Security came in. A few people did have to be physically removed. There was plenty of chanting. Plenty of confusion. Debate was suspended. Sort of parliamentary staff were watching on in sort of shock as all of this was unfolding. It ultimately, proceedings were suspended, I suppose, for about 15 minutes. The protesters moved outside, and once debate resumed, you could actually hear them. The chanting was going on outside, so certainly a very lively night in the life of Queensland Parliament.
Yeah, it sounds like it. Now, Jay, you are actually, or were one of the protesters there last night. So what were you chanting and why?
We're basically just chanting because these are our rights that they're playing with. We're just chanting about their bigotry, that their ideas and their beliefs don't really have any part in this parliament today, in our law system, in Australian society. We're saying, hey, hey, ho, ho, homophobia had to go. Those kind of chants, which are quite familiar with the people that come to our rallies, but really just, it really just takes a stance on the kind of thing that we're fighting against. Like, these are our rights. These are, our lives that people are playing with. And the fact that, the majority of Australians support equality, whether it be civil unions or marriage, and including Christians themselves, over 50% of them also support it as well. Just the fact that the government actually has come in and tried to rename it as a registry, like something that you would register your dog or your cat or your car, it's just completely horrible.
With the introduction of the Newman into government, did you expect this to happen, this turnaround?
Well, they actually said they were going to do it, but they actually had to plan to pull it all, repeal the whole civil unions. But obviously with the rally with 2,000 plus people several weeks ago, it just shows the community support there, as well as an online e-petition, which I think has up to about 5,000 signatures now. It just shows that the support there. So I'm really not quite sure what they're thinking to try and get all this stuff repealed or make all these changes. There's obviously that there's something behind the scenes that's happening there, that's having more say than what the actual community is.
Dennis, why do you can have your input here if there's something going on behind the scenes, as Jay mentioned.
Well, I think there was a fair discussion that went on inside the LNP party room. Campbell Newman, as we know, he has in the past supported equality, marriage equality, gay marriage, and he's never really appeared comfortable with the idea of winding back civil unions. He didn't want to talk about it much at all during the election campaign, but there was always going to be some sort of move. And I think he thinks this is sort of a halfway house between leaving it as it was and giving in to some of the vocal elements on his backbench, and also some senior people in the party apparatus who would like to do away with civil unions altogether. But then we saw, sort of out of the blue last night, also a winding back of the surrogacy laws, and I think that was probably a bit of a trade-off that they did in the back rooms to those people who wanted to do away with civil unions altogether. They said, look, keep quiet about that, and we'll get rid of surrogacy rights for same-sex couples. I think that's taking Queensland out of step with the rest of Australia, with other jurisdictions. So I think that is a bit of a backward step.
It's almost like Campbell Newman, or it appears to be like he's treading a fine line, trying to keep every side happy. But in fact, in doing so, he might be making putting everyone offside.
Yeah, well, there always is that danger, sort of Joe Jelke-Peterson always used to warn people about the dangers of trying to straddle the barbed wire fence. It can be a bit uncomfortable.
Andrew, it was interesting with the surrogacy laws that were brought up last night in Parliament after all the action happened with the protests over the civil unions, and you said it was almost as if it was sort of crept in there at the end when all the action had died down and all the protesters had left.
Yeah. I suppose, you could ask the question about whether the Attorney General had intended to slot that in there had the gallery not been cleared. And I think certainly that the way the night proceeded and the atmosphere from the public gallery, it was almost seemed like it was only a matter of time before perhaps it was cleared, just given the sort of the outcries that kept coming from there. But certainly, had it not been cleared earlier, I think it definitely would have once the Attorney General made the surrogacy announcements or suggestions.
Jay, will the fight continue?
Oh yes, definitely. The LNP have their state conference on the 14th of July at the Hilton Hotel. We're organising a mass rally for there, just to say that these are our rights. We aren't going to sit silently while you take them away from us. So it's not just the civil unions that they're playing with and the surrogacy. They're also taking funding away from the Health and Communities, which is a big a gay community group that gets funded by the government, $2.6 million per year, that actually has decreased the HIV prevention within gay men, which is better than what it is within Queensland and other states. And it just seems like there's attack after attack after attack since this LNP government has came in. And the fact that we're trying to move forward together as a community, as a state, but this is just pushing us whole heap of back. So we're just going to keep on fighting. So you can check on our Facebook group, Equal Love Brisbane. We'll have all of our events there. So yeah.
Right, well, let us know what you think about this. Of course, this is The Lunch Break. You can contact us on Twitter. Just put in #The Lunch Break, or of course leave a comment under any of the stories that we bring up today.